Now, beginning in verse 10 and continuing through to the end of this passage in verse 21, the angel shows John the physical attributes of the facade and structure of the city of New Jerusalem and its surrounding walls. With the former heaven and earth now having passed away, that is, the former abode of mankind and all of creation that had been corrupted by the presence of sin, according to Romans chapter 8, verses 22 and 23, the New Jerusalem is now presented and comes from God's abode through the new heaven to rest upon the new earth. Now all of creation is glorified in the presence of the Lamb, and mankind in gloriously perfected bodies may begin a new eternity in which they will live as the Lord had originally intended before the fall of man in Genesis chapter 2, verses 21 through 25, where we see the near perfect state of man living in the garden. Now, the physical description of the New Jerusalem is given in a general outline as follows. In verse 11, we see the overall appearance of the city. In verses 12 and 13, we see the wall and the names upon the 12 gates. In verse 14, we see the names upon the 12 foundations. In verses 15 through 17, we see the overall physical dimensions of the city. In verse 18, the appearance of the exterior wall of the city is given. In verses 19 and 20, the appearance of the 12 foundations is given. And in verse 21, we learn about the 12 gates. Now, the city itself is described as having the glory of God with the radiant brilliance and clarity of a precious gemstone. The wall is described as a singular item, and perhaps this is referring to its appearance as a continuous or monolithic structure surrounding the city as if being formed out of a single piece of material. This is certainly reminiscent of the seamless unity among the Trinity and between the saints and the Lord. The description of the 12 names written upon the 12 gates, which would be one name per gate, as being the names of the 12 tribes of the children of Israel, is the first of 5 mentions of 12 items in this passage. Since 12 is the Lord's number of perfect government, and 5 is the number of grace, this combination is appropriate for the city of the New Jerusalem. This city is both the location of the seat from which he rules and reigns throughout all eternity with his saints, and its completed work is representative of the culmination of his promise to every believer who has trusted him by grace through faith. Now, the unique mentions of 12 in this passage are as follows. There are 12 gates, 12 angels, one at each gate, 12 tribes of Israel, the names of all 12 upon each gate, 12 foundations, and 12 apostles of the Lamb, the name of one upon each foundation. Now, the gates mentioned here are likely open archways or portals in the wall surrounding the city, not doors or grated barriers. Since we know that all conditions both within and without the city are perfect, and all inhabitants of the earth and of the city are glorified saints and godly angels, there is no need for any kind of door or barrier. It's likely that the names of the tribes of Israel are written upon the lintels of the doors. The names of these tribes are listed in Revelation chapter 7, verses 5 through 8. And as explained in verse 13, there are 3 gates along each face of the city. The 12 foundations of verse 14 are possibly in the form of 12 steps that lead up to the main city and are used to support the superstructure of the city wall. The names of each of the 12 apostles of the Lamb, one per foundation, may possibly be located in alignment with each of the 12 gates so that anyone entering at any of the 12 gates will see first the names of the 12 tribes of Israel at the gate, then the names of each of the 12 apostles of the Lamb as they ascend the 12 foundations of the city. The names of the apostles of the Lamb are found in Matthew 10, 2 through 4, and we can also find them in Luke 6, 13 through 16. With the Apostle Paul, replacing Judas Iscariot, as we find in Acts chapter 9, verses 10 through 16, and 1 Corinthians 15:9. Next, the angel is seen having a golden reed by which he is about to measure, first, the overall city, second, the gates, and third, the wall. The dimensions with the approximate English unit equivalents are as follows. The city's length, width, and height are equal at 12,000 furlongs, which is approximately 1,500 miles in each direction. Now, this doesn't mean that the city itself is a cube. These are overall dimensions. The specifics on the structural shape and detail are not given here. The wall surrounding the city is at a height of 144 cubits, which is approximately 220 feet. There are no dimensions given for the gates. Finally, now in verses 18 through 21, we see the color and brilliance of each of the elements of the city structure. The wall is described as jasper in appearance, and this refers to its brilliance and clarity, and perhaps even to a luster similar to that of fire. Jasper is also typically translucent, which means that the wall does not obscure the view of the city within. The city itself, the facade, is compared to pure gold like unto clear glass. This description refers to both the color and the luster of the city. It is golden in color with a perfectly smooth surface. As for the foundations, each of the 12 foundations is described as being garnished or adorned with precious stones. And there are 12 stones mentioned, which we don't need to look at in detail, but suffice it to say that they are beyond compare in beauty and brilliance. Now, not only are these gemstones significant for their individual coloration, which in and of themselves would make them absolutely beautiful, but their texture and luster are very striking as well. Given even the few details that we can discern regarding the external appearance of the city of the New Jerusalem, we can easily see that it will be a place of tremendous size, having immaculate beauty and unprecedented perfection. And something we may want to note here is that the color green, which appears both in Ezekiel and Revelation, and we have seen this color before in chapter 4 of Revelation, is most commonly associated with the visible glory of God. Now, lastly, the 12 gates and the street, and there is only one street mentioned. I know the popular song tells us that we will walk the streets of purest gold, but Revelation begs to differ. There is only one street, but I'm sure we won't be disappointed. The 12 gates in the street of the city are briefly described in verse 21. Each gate is pearl-like in appearance and is formed out of a single stone. The appearance of each gate might be likened to an iridescent ivory having the names of the 12 tribes of Israel carved into them. The word street may be also translated as a large flat surface or an expanse. Thus, the street is actually the main floor of the city. It's the main surface of the city and not just a causeway. This surface is described as being gold that is so pure and lustrous that it appears to John to be as transparent glass.